Hi guys, me again, and welcome to another video. Apologies for the delay since the last video. I was hoping to get these done a little bit quicker, but the last couple of weeks have been a bit hectic for me. It was my birthday recently, and other less interesting things. But all that said and done, let's get into this video, where I thought I would talk about what the book is actually about. So yeah, let's get into it. The Stone Curse is a children's fantasy novel inspired by the likes of The Hobbit, which was my absolute favourite book when I was growing up, and still is one of my favourite books of all time. It starts off in the kingdom of Verma, which is a peaceful land ruled by King Malin, who's celebrating his 52nd birthday. And he's such a beloved king that whenever he celebrates his birthday, it's not just a get-together of a few friends. The whole nation descends upon the capital, which is called Hillcoven, to celebrate in a week-long festival. Travelling to the festival is a young boy called Oscar Grubb, who's crossing the sea from his small fishing village to go to the festival, which will be his first. He's never left his village before, and he's the kind of boy that longs for adventure. He's always got his nose buried in adventure books and stories about pirates and knights and stuff like that. So needless to say, he's super excited about leaving his village for the first time and to go to the biggest event in the year of all things. And whilst Oscar's arriving in the city, already there is a young girl called Lily Richard. And she's there for the festival also, but for entirely different reasons. I don't want to spoil too much, but she's interested in a library known as, quite ominously, as a secret library, which is hidden in the palace. Through one clue after another, she's discovered a way into this library, and what she's after is an ancient book, because in this world, magic and mages no longer exists. Thousands of years ago they were the master race, these mages, but no longer. In fact, so ancient are they that they're a little more than myth now, and a lot of people don't even believe that magic ever existed. But Lily does believe for one reason or another, and she wants to learn as much as she can about that time. And she's caught wind of this book that is a relic from that bygone age, and she's going to break into the palace to... She doesn't want to steal the book, she just wants to have a look at it, have a read of it, and see what secrets she can unearth. So she's successful in breaking into the library, and Oscar is successful in having a good time. The festival's in full swing, and it's about to get to the centrepiece of the whole affair, which is called the Grand Show, which takes place in the Royal Square. And the royal family go there and have their little box and whatnot, and everyone just sits around the square where this show takes place, the Grand Show. And it takes many forms. One year it was an opera, one year it was a play or musical, but this year it's a magic show from a great illusionist called the Great Maju. And so Oscar and his family descend upon the square. Meanwhile, Lily's found the book and she's doing her best to read it, but it's written in an ancient language that she doesn't even recognise the characters of which. So she's doing her best with it, but she's disturbed as two mysterious figures also enter the library. They don't appear to be palace guards. They're draped in black robes and seem to move with the shadows. They're altogether rather ominous. So she realises quickly that they're also there for the book, and she gets the feeling that them finding the book is probably not a good idea. So she decides to break out of the palace with the book in her possession, being chased by these two mysterious figures and by the palace guard, who's here as a thief, which she kind of is, but by accident. So she races towards the Grand Show, and she arrives under the stage, where she finds a man bound, and not in a good way at all. The man reveals himself to be the actual Great Maju, and that the man on stage is an imposter. She helps him out, helps him escape, and then she finds herself on the stage with this imposter, who reveals himself to be an actual mage from 1,000 years ago, who's come to this time to seek bloody revenge. And he's chosen to do this in the form of summoning a dragon, which he does, and the dragon starts raining fiery terror upon the city. But the dragon's fire doesn't burn its victims, it turns them into stone. And starting with the royal family, spreading out throughout the city, one by one people are getting turned into stone. So everyone tries to flee, obviously, but this is largely in vain. Oscar and his family are among those people attempting to flee, and they cross paths with Lily, whose Oscar's father sees as just a young girl in need of help, not knowing how tenacious and capable a person she is. So they rush for the south gate, which leads out into the Vermilion Fields and hopefully freedom. But the dragon, seemingly bored with turning individuals into stone, shoots up into the air and lets loose an almighty fireball, which falls down onto the city, breaks off into a dome shape, which is going to cover the entire city. Sensing that they're not going to make it, Oscar's father tosses Oscar and Lily out of the south gate, and they just barely manage to cross that threshold before the fireball hits the ground, because once it does, the entire city is turned to stone. There's a few dozen people that have managed to make it out, and a couple of them try to rush back in the city to help their loved ones. But when they cross that threshold, they turn to stone themselves. So now we have two young people standing on the outside of the city, looking in at their family and loved ones turned into grotesque statues. Oscar naturally starts to weep, and Lily, feeling somewhat responsible for him, embraces him, and the two form a fast friendship. And not knowing why, simply just to console him, she says, "We can fix this," and Oscar takes that as gospel. And Lily, remembering she has in her possession this ancient book of magic, starts to believe it herself, and the two embark on a quest to save Oscar's family, to save the city, and to stop this mage from causing more havoc across the world. And I won't tell you too much about it, lest I spoil the story. But their quest takes them all over the land. They get into all kinds of adventures, meet all kinds of people. There's a really great character actually that joins them on their quest, which I'll leave as a bit of a surprise just now. But yeah, that's the story in a nutshell. Now, in terms of how I wrote the book, I don't mean so much in my writing process, but the style in which it's written is very much inspired by The Hobbit. As I said earlier, it was my all-time favourite book when I was growing up, and it still is one of my all-time favourite books. And I wrote it to be of a similar vein. Like, when I was a child, what I loved about The Hobbit was just the adventure. The plot was irrelevant to me. The reason for them going out and doing this thing was irrelevant. It was the adventures that happened on the roads. That's what interested me. As I was writing it, I was coming up with all these backstories and all this lore for this world, which eventually I do want to write sequels to the book, so I could save it for that. But there was a couple of drafts where it started to get very weighted and very heavy, and I thought that's not what I wanted from the book. I wanted the book just to be quite simplistic in its form, and just be a very basic adventure and have lots of exciting things happen on the road. And so that's kind of what I was hoping to achieve with the book, and to my mind there's no better example of that than The Hobbit. So it's what I've tried to emulate in some ways, but I like to think I've put my own style into it as well. But it is difficult to do that though, because as I said, like, I was coming up with all this stuff, and like, so the city has this, like, the initial city has this entire like backstory and history, and I've got pages and pages of notes about different characters and where they come from and what they're up to and stuff like that. Like that character I mentioned earlier that joins them on their quest, like I know exactly everything that happens to them in the future, and I know that everything that's happened to them in the past. Because he's quite a mysterious character himself, and I didn't want to reveal too much in this book. Chiefly because it wasn't relevant to the story, and that's, again, what I'm trying to say here is that with this book I wanted to keep it a simplistic, flowing adventure, where the adventure was what the point was, not so much the circumstances surrounding it. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it when you get to read it eventually, and I think I'll call it a day there. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a subscribe and comment if you've got any questions about the book and stuff of that ilk. But all that said and done, thanks very much for joining me. Cheers.